Hi, everyone. I am Serena Keith, and I have the pleasure of introducing Mo Taylor, who is the founder of SNP Communications. SNP stands for Smart, Nice People, a well-established leadership communication firm in the Bay Area and globally. And she is here to speak with us today about the importance of reminding leaders to ground themselves in communication as a tool to solve the most important problems for their business. Welcome, Mo.
Well, thanks for having me. And by the way, co-founder.
Excuse me, co-founder, yes. Would you like, in the absence of your other co-founder, do you want to give a little bit of background on Ren?
Oh, he's wonderful. So he's co-founder, husband, father of two millennial children. So wow, that's a disaster. But we're 35 years of building the business, building a family, and we have the same values and we respect each other's core competency. So it's been a fascinating and continues to be a fascinating effort, discipline, relationship. And the good thing is we still laugh.
Hmm, wonderful. Well, so Mo, I want to ask you just to start off by a couple of background questions. Think back to before SNP was all that it is today. Do you remember what made you decide initially to pursue a career in helping other people and specifically leaders improve themselves?
So to be of service was something that was kind of in our family growing up in San Francisco. Also working for Fran and Mike Sanchez, who are the owners, or were the owners, their family still is, of Mama's Restaurant on Washington Square. Anybody that knows North Beach knows Mama's. They had opened a number of restaurants. They were the first restaurant to go into a department store, and also on Nob Hill. And I got to work for them while I was kind of figuring out through school. And these were owners, entrepreneurs, first creators of the California cuisine, fresh food. I mean, just fascinating people, really strict, really hard. But there was something about them that, as the leaders, as the core, how hard they worked and how they drove everybody to work as hard. Work ethic and being service oriented was just ingrained in me. It was the only way that you could stay there working. And I learned everything from them. So there was that. And then searching for what I wanted to major in, I was every major you could think of because I was fascinated by everything until I found Aristotle, S.I. Hayakawa, and the whole San Francisco state, because that's where you can go off and on to school for 8 years and nobody gets mad at you. That if you look at what Aristotle said, that it is communication that keeps anything going, and studying him and how he created linear thinking in the outline, I thought that's a place to focus on, because no matter what interest, because I was computer science, I was philosophy, I was journalism, I was TV, radio, history, urban studies, and I loved everything. But if you have this idea of how you can understand what's going on and also highlight what are the major topics so you can learn anything, I decided to major on that. And then at the same time, in California, in the state system, they made public speaking a general education requirement. So we working on our masters, we got to teach the classes. So they went from like 5 public speaking classes to 30, and teaching kids not that much younger than me how to be able to articulate, and never really realizing that public speaking is the biggest fear people have over death and flying. It was magical to be able to see people go from fetal position to making a point about something that could inspire and motivate people. So that's where I got it from.
Wow. It sounds like I sort of am similar to you, where I was a child with so many interests. So it sounds like what you found was really a common thread across everything, which was that the most important thing was, in fact, communication. Did you yourself struggle with any public speaking fears, or was that totally foreign to you to
Are
find a
you
bunch of
kidding me?
people who were freaking
I'm
out?
petrified. I'm shy. So unless I have a job, like I don't go to parties, I give parties. Mhm.
Got
So
it.
you have it's a job. And John Chambers at Cisco, he taught me too. He didn't meditate, but I'll never forget it. How when you are there and you're in charge of being, you're taking people's time, their most valuable commodity. You better
Yeah.
be good. And instead of thinking about me, oh my God, are they going to like me? To totally focus, be prepared with your content, and actually connect with the audience and make it meaningful for them. The whole focus being on that takes your head out of your you know what about being shy, which I am, or narcissistic, will they like me type of thing. So, yeah, yeah, horrible.
Hmm. So then at some point you made the transition from teaching students who are not so much younger than yourself, to teaching professionals or aspiring professionals and leaders. What was that? What made you decide to move in that direction? And what was that like in the early stages?
Well, there's this wonderful company in New York City called Communispond. Never quite understood why they called it that, but the most incredible people I've ever met, and they were a public speaking company. And the head of product was this ex-priest who had left the priesthood, who went to work for Communispond. His name is Emmett Wolf. And he was also into Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle and the whole thing. So that classical connection. And to be able to teach then grown-ups that worked in big companies how to be able to communicate with each other. Um, and he believed quantum mechanic thingamajigger where nothing happens significantly unless there is that interaction between people. So, despite the fact that everyone thinks that what they do is the most important thing, how the people do it is whether it really happens or not, because it's the people that do it. So, I was just so inspired by him and learned everything from him.
Wow. And then you decided at some point with Ren, your partner, your husband, father of your children, person that you still laugh with, that you were going to start your own business. What what made you decide to give your gift to the world and sort of teach in that context where you would be working with other professionals, um, under your own mantle?
Well, we started from a journalistic perspective because we were both really interested in that, and we were trying to start our own radio network. We loved
Mm.
interviewing people. The very first program on computers called On Computers with John C. Dvorak. And it was really hard to sell it because radio stations didn't have computers at that time. But the whole interviewing people, understanding where they're coming from, and then producing things where people actually talk to each other, listen, and then people can learn from it. The journalistic thing we were fascinated by. So that's what we were trying to start and work on, and then bring it into companies. Because, like, the idea of a talk radio for the head of sales to be able to have some sort of program where he or she interviews people and then it's broadcast out to everybody. And at the time, it was cassette tapes that would, I don't know if people remember Sun Microsystems, one of the greatest companies on the planet. And their head of sales, they would interview folks, and then we would send the cassettes out to all the salespeople. And then cars improved, and it was CDs. So the salespeople got the CDs, and the SEs still got the cassettes. And then it went on the intranet because there was an intranet that was different from the internet. And so if there was bandwidth to be able to get it out, and then the very first web event we did. But the whole idea was the broadcast thing and the communication people, and then realizing people were having a hard time communicating my background and the understanding of public speaking, having a conversation with folks, actually listening, became part of it. So that became part of the company. But the beginning was the broadcast and the journalism piece of it is still
Fascinating.
part of our company.
Was the idea for there to, you take the head of sales to be able to broadcast what was going on inside of the company to external folks, or was it meant to be an internal? I almost slipped up and said podcast because it sounds like you were so prescient for what was then to come. But was the idea to have it be broadcast internally for the company?
Well, interesting there because it could go both ways,
Mm,
but we were focused on internal,
mm,
and we bumbled, fumbled, tumbled into technology. So it
mm,
wasn't like I'm an engineer, but I just found engineers fascinating because they know that they're the only intelligent people in the world, but there's something about them that is so artistic, and to
mm.
connect with them because they're building something and they're so. But it takes people to build it. So how they connect with each other, that became part of it. And nobody gives a about internal communications, really. I mean, everyone
Mm.
wants PR, marketing, think different up on the billboard. And I get it. I think that's very important. But the people that make you successful, it's not the billboard that helps, but it is your constituency. All of these folks have to have their eye on what they're doing and why they're doing it. And so to be able to help really cool people who are trying to make the world a better place have every single person that works there say the same thing, understand what they're supposed to do, and be connected. The success of the company, the efficiency, the productivity, and the success is killer app. So
Well,
it's one
that
of
is a point on which you and I absolutely, absolutely agree. Um, I guess so. What um, you began sort of in broadcast, and then you started noticing that companies and leaders in particular really struggled with the communication piece, and so
the
you kind of sounds like you backed into that area, which obviously has been a real pain point for a lot of companies over the years. Um, any before we dive into more specifics, any really high level things you noticed early on about the ways in which leaders were or were not communicating inside of their companies that you said this really needs to change?
So Aristotle, a long time ago, said there are three things you need to do to be able to move your army or the other people that you want to do something. Three things. First, you have to understand them. Second, you have to make the content of what you're trying to do clear and connected to them. And then how you do it has to be memorable. So seek understanding, make the content clear, and then make it memorable. So this is true, or it was true then, and it's true now. So the seek understanding is the hardest thing because everyone's thinking about themselves. I need to develop a strategy to make you work better. I mean, and it's something you fight all the time, and every leader knows this because if you're going to lead, it's not about you, it's about what you're doing. And to motivate and inspire people into action, what do you think? I'm just going to say, go do it. No, there's something really important about connecting with you, and then through that connection, having some sort of conversation or connection that will allow you, audience, to listen, be inspired, and then motivated to take action. I mean, that's a lot. You want people to listen because no one listens to anyone ever, ever, right? Nobody. So to have people listen and pay attention and then be motivated or inspired to do something, to get people to do something, that is the constant challenge of anybody in leadership.
It's amazing to me as you describe the challenge of inspiring other people to do something or follow your lead, and accomplish something together seems like such the obvious definition of leadership, and yet Even as you're saying that, I think it's not an afterthought for people, but it's just not what people are caught up in doing when they're leading sort of day in, day out. And yet, um, there probably isn't anything more important because you can write all day about what it is that you want to do. You can speak to yourself in the mirror about what it is that you want to do. But unless you're, yeah, building the army or the people around you to make that happen, you've got nothing.
Well,
You've
and
got
when you
thin
think
air.
about it, like Aristotle came up with um, how, like, the legal system, like if you're going to be in front of a judge and you're defending or prosecuting, you need to understand your opponent's argument better than your own to win. In debate, anybody who's ever debated, if you're
Yeah.
going to argue or compete, uh, understand your enemy, your opponent's argument as well, if not better. And so there's a very practical, let's win the debate. But the idea
Hmm.
of truly knowing where you're coming from and where your head is before we start to figure out if we can make movement in a particular direction. Because like, I believe in win-win. If there's something about what you need or want that adds to the community, why not include that?
Hmm.
But you have to understand first.
Yeah.
Salespeople, and I learned this from Emmett. You walk into a sales meeting, and really, are you going to pitch what you do? I mean, seriously, you're going to pitch to somebody what you do so they can buy it? That's BS. I mean, it's terrible. First, find out why the person wants to talk to you, what they're interested in, what their problems are, where they come from. Have they worked with people like you before? Never, ever, ever talk. He made us go in New York City. We had to go around and practice listening to see who could get the biggest deal, make the most money, and speak the least amount of words. Because what does connect you to somebody else? It's them thinking you understand them. And how can you do that more competitively than somebody else? 2 words, he said: shut up. Like, he made us do
I
it over and over and over again.
I it's funny, in person, there's obviously this debate about lacking social cues when you're remote and behind a screen as opposed to being in person when you can feel things out. I actually think that over the last few years, I have learned to shut up because I'm more aware of my presence, because of the mirrored video of myself. It has actually allowed me to take a breath and focus better than than I was doing in person to person interactions. I don't know if other people feel the same way or if they feel exactly the opposite, but um, I think it's a lesson that is cemented for me, certainly since moving online.
And certainly, Scott McNealy, Sun Microsystems, promised that the hologram was coming. That was in 1989, and it hasn't. So this is a step to another way of communicating from only being in person. The hard part with this one, though, is for the audience to know that you're connecting with them. Eye contact is the number one thing that connects you with other people. So for
Yeah.
you or the audience or anyone to think that I'm connecting with them, I have to look at the bloody camera, not at you. So now I can look at you and I can look out the window and I can do different things. So that was the hardest adjustment, to have leaders who need to connect with the audience, that you have to remember that their heart and soul is through the camera. And it's so funny because anybody who loves Anderson Cooper as much as I do, I just think he's fabulous. When I watch him, I mean, he looks at me and tells me the news every night. And he's looking at the bloody camera, right? So again, to remember what he said, Aristotle, everything is about the audience seeking understanding. Part of it is not just the intellectual connection, but also where are they? What are they doing? How do you connect with them?
Yeah. It is unfortunate. As you're saying this, I'm remembering to look at the green dot on my computer, and Yeah, it's unfortunate that it's a green dot. I wish it was a set of eyes, or I wish it was something more appealing to take a look at.
So what I tell
Um,
people is to remember when you were in the 8th grade, who was it that you did not kiss that you always wish you had? It makes everyone laugh, and
mm,
so you name the green dot. Anyway, I think with the hologram, as that
yeah,
comes, it will get a little easier, but for now, this is what we have.
perfect. Well, we've covered certainly the early part of your career and finding your footing in giving this gift to leaders inside of organizations almost by backing into it. I guess, you know, bring the audience up to speed a bit. What type of leaders have you worked with over the years without naming names specifically? Um, and how do you spend time with leaders? What does sort of the day-to-day look like when you're working with leaders on their communication?
So the big thing are the 3 Aristotle things. Who is the
Hmm.
audience? What do they care about? What's going on with them? What is it you want to say? And then are they an inductive or deductive thinker? Because whether it is for a broadcast or for a talk or for their all hands or for a conversation with the board or for pitching for money or whatever, just like it is classic, which means it survives. You do need to think about those things, but it's a constant effort because it's anti-human. Human is to be take care of yourself, and so
Mm.
me, right, and to really focus on that on the outside, again, to be able to make something happen with efficiency, productivity, and then it's successful, whatever the definition is on that. So, no matter what it is, whether it's a class, a session, a meeting, like a big meeting where you're up in front of all these people, who are these poor slobs that come in and have to sit or are tied to a screen where they have to listen to you? Why do they care about what you say? And it doesn't take a lot because we know what we want to say, right? But to think about the audience first is it's a killer app, and it's something just like push-ups. You have to do every day. You can't take for granted that your arms are always going to look great and be buff. You have to work on it. This thing is the same. Who are you? What do you care about? Why does this content matter to you? And then to be able to make it clear enough so they understand it. Now, in going through school and having to work full time, if I had to read a textbook and write an essay, I did not have time to read a stupid textbook, but I could read the table of contents. And a table of contents is the outline. And if you read the outline and seriously read the outline, which is the table of contents, conceptually, you get the point of the book. You don't get the details, but you get the point. So you can write an essay and get an A minus. Now, obviously, the minus was there because I hadn't read the book. But if you the way that you get information across, whether you're an inductive or deductive thinker, as a communicator, it is with Roman numeral 1, 2, and 3, and then all the rest of it. Engineers, which are my heart and soul artists of an inflection point in humanity, which is technology. Okay, and they've gotten out of control and all that kind of stuff, but they're figuring it out. But still, they create things to make the world a better place. That was the original intent. They're deductive thinkers, so everything is detailed because they're building it to last. But when you communicate, you have to turn it around and give people the 3 major points or whatever that is to be able to get the other audience to understand. Like journalism, this is where it all ties together. What do you read first on the front page? Biden is running again. Now you can read the whole newspaper on everything, but at least it's memorable. You know what's happening. You don't know everything about it, but you know the key point. So to be able to work with folks to think that way doesn't take a lot of time, but it is a mental discipline that you have to remember to apply. Interview, meeting, speech, video, anything. Who is the audience? What do they care about? And what are the major points in a linear way? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it seems extremely clear. And when you say it, it also seems simple. But of course, we all know because we live every day in the real world around people who struggle to communicate, and we ourselves struggle to communicate, that it's not nearly as simple when we try to practice it ourselves. Um, do you have any thoughts on why it is, obviously, Backstage focuses on helping managers and leaders develop a number of great skills, most of which have to do with communication and figuring out the dynamics about the people that you're working around and what they need to hear and what they need to understand. Why do you think it is that, you know, we communicate every single day of our lives? And so, in a way, it's a skill that many of us feel like we have, but that the kind of communication that we all need in our professional lives is so foreign to us as a concept. Why do you think that distinction exists, that we can't lean on our communication habits um, that we bring to ordinary life if we're actually trying to get something big done?
So, probably because most of us don't respect it
Hmm.
as a skill. We don't respect ourselves as a platform for a message. And certainly the narcissism takes over where we do not think first about who we're talking about. So, I mean, we dealt with that our whole lives. Oh, you're one of those people. And there are a lot, just like there's a lot of horrible therapy people. Like right now, there's what, 10 billion people that you can get therapy on the phone. They can't all be good. I mean, there's billions of coaches now, and it's become a commodity. But still, it's so important. It's classic that to respect it like you do your diet, physical, if you have mental discipline on how you work or how you actually build something within a time frame. I mean, this discipline that we bring to so many things to bring to being able to, if you're serious, doesn't matter anybody else, but if you're serious about taking people's time and making it connect and count for them and to do something, you look at it like a sport or a musical instrument, and it takes the same kind of practice and discipline. It's
Hmm.
exhausting.
Hmm. Um, let's talk a little bit about kind of working with leaders around setting up good communication practices inside of their organizations. Obviously, they have lots of different audiences that are external, and it's really important for them to be able to tailor their communication for them. But when it comes to setting up your company for success time and time again with good communication practices, what do you sort of tell people about how to communicate, how often to communicate, and what to be communicating um, so that everybody in the organization knows what they need to know?
Yeah, clarity, so people know what's going on and why, especially right now because the world is still so discombobulated and there's a weird insecurity that everyone's going through to know what's going on and why it's going on as close to the truth as possible without getting anyone fired unless they should be. I don't mean to be stupid about everything. First of all, you don't have to remember what you said because it's true, whatever you said. Um, the clarity of that is extremely difficult right now, and I'm not quite sure why. But if you remember always that if people don't know what's going on, they're going to make up far worse than
Mm.
the truth. I mean, may as well have people worry about what they should worry about instead of there's something to worry about. There's something to worry about. And anybody who leads knows that it's a giant daycare center. Part of it is a daycare center. We're all tall 8-year-olds. And so taking care of people to make sure, because there's weird stuff that goes on, at least tell them what's going on and why. Also, as a leader, you can never be friends with people. The one thing that not everyone understands, I don't think, is how lonely it is.
Mm.
To be in charge of something is really, really lonely. So, and a huge responsibility. Um, and San Francisco State taught me that if you're the instructor or if you're the lead, you can never completely step from behind the podium and become friends with people because you're in charge of their paycheck. You have decisions. So that relationship is weird and complicated, but it can be beautiful within the within that context if you're always connecting with them on what's going on and why is going on. So weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly, that you are in touch with people. Um, there has to be an emotional connection to a leader too, without it being friendly. So one of the things we do is have people, we call it a headliner, a 90-second thing once a week about what's going on,
Hmm.
what's going on within the work context this week. It could be a conversation. It could be a board meeting that something happened. It could be letting people know that it's tough and we're going to be considering stuff. But hearing the voice in a not formal setting is extremely bonding with the human side. You can't step behind. You have to stay behind, but you can't behind the podium, but you can give people something that they can depend on. And that's very important
Mm.
because what can we depend on right now? That's what Gen Z says. Nothing. That's what they
Mm.
think, right? So,
It's a really interesting point. So what you said was, don't if you take it to an informal place, it's really helpful for bonding. Do you mean doing that outside of work hours or outside of the day to day? I mean, what does that mean for what should people take away from that as a lesson for their companies?
so, so we learned it with a car company, and the car company was going through looking for the CEO, and all sorts of people were competing. This is 132 years ago that this happened. And there was a very prominent leader who, for sure, everyone thought was going to be the CEO. But this other guy got it. And when we were trying to figure out how the other guy got it, he wrote this stupid email to his employees every week about
Mm.
what was going on in the company. And it was that big, it was tiny. I had a conversation with Jimmy the other day, who's a new employee. Jimmy noticed that the way we get something from the actual line that we're working on to the next level could be improved by adding 2 screws to the top of the nail or something like that. Welcome, Jimmy, and thanks for the input. Or I was on vacation last week and I was hiking with my family, and I just took a moment to say to myself how grateful I am to be working with all of you. Thank you.
Mm.
Next week it was, I'm back from vacation. I'm back from vacation and poop has hit the wall. So I'm here and there's 3 problems we're going to discuss, more to come. But it was familiar about the work, about what happened, not official, not board presentation or TED Talky, just what's going on. The people loved it. So that connection that takes such a little time and isn't official and doesn't go through all the rigmarole seems to bond people to the leader. Sounds
Mm.
really simple. Takes 15 minutes a week.
I appreciate you sharing with people 2 avenues, sort of a layered approach to improving communication, which matters in all aspects, but both in terms of respecting people's time and making sure that when you're taking up their time, you are focusing on them and what they need to learn, which seems to apply to all manner of communication, formal and informal. But then also this idea of making sure that you're seeking out connection um, with the people that you work with, where not that the rules are different, but you are keeping an open communication channel, um, which might be something that people find easier to accomplish. Um, Well, Mo, I really appreciate you sitting down with us. I feel like I could talk to you for hours, and your stories and your insights and your just nuggets of wisdom are fascinating, and I know will be really beneficial to people who are listening. So thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with me today.
Absolutely. Thank you. It was so enjoyable and always fun to talk to you. Take care.
Bye.